Today's guest started out in kitchens, moved into sales, climbed through national account leadership, and ran major teams for brands like Brakes, Bidfood, Nisbets, and is now managing director of Fat Boys Catering Equipment, leading the team and shaping the future of the business. I wanted to get him on the podcast, not just because he's known for excellent sales leadership and has a stellar reputation in our industry, but because his business went through an unbelievable case of fraud that could have ended everything and instead became a galvanizing moment that changed the business forever. There's some massive lessons in that for everyone running a business or just working in a company. And just to make his CV seem even more ridiculous, he even cooked for Gaza, Peter Crouch, and Kevin Phillips when he worked as a chef. Dan Oliver, welcome to the You've Got Sales podcast.
Thank you very much, David. And a fantastic introduction. I'll have to remember a lot of
that. Well, obviously, people are going to ask about Gaza, Crouchy, Kevin Phillips. So you started off as a chef for those guys. It was in Southampton, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was. I mean, after I kind of finished off my qualifications as learning how to be a chef and actually learning how to cook from scratch, I managed to get a role at a restaurant in Southampton, and I'm not making this name up. It was actually called Blah Blah Blah. It was in the Oxford Street of Southampton. For anybody that knows Southampton, it's just around the corner from St Mary's.
Yeah.
And we had the privilege.
It's from Southampton, so no.
Yes.
Around there. Yeah.
So we had the privilege of being next door to the Grapes pub, and the Grapes pub was, it's a fantastic, really, really lovely place. Apart from match day, day was horrible. So we had loads of people that would come over and they would drink into the pub, and then you'd see them go to the game, then come back 9 times out of 10 miserable because of the outcome of the game. But what we managed to get was we managed to get a couple of the then Southampton players that came in for something quiet to eat. So that was really good. Crouchy and Kevin Phillips both came in together with their other half, and Gaza was slightly different. So that was when I was head chef at the Bicester Town and Country Club, and he came in with I can't remember his full name. I think it was recognised as someone Five Bellies or something like that. And he came in, asked for a tuna niçoise. So I remember what he cooked, got my ticket with Paul Gascoigne on the top, signed by him. He was a great character, really, really full of the joys of spring.
Did you feel the pressure?
God, yeah. I mean, oh my God, yeah. So, I mean, when you you hear that Paul Gascoigne is going to come in and he was using the gym facilities, that's the reason why he came in for something to eat.
Right.
But as soon as you feel like you're cooking for Paul Gascoigne, you think this is only going to go one or two ways. Luckily for me, I can cook a good tuna niçoise. Nice. So I made that for him, and equally with Crouchy and Phillips. They both enjoyed their food. They both stayed for a long time, spent a lot of money, which was fantastic. But don't tip as generously as I was hoping at the time.
Well, is that after they got relegated, or is that before they when they're still in the Prem?
It was when they were in the Prem still. So I think it was the season after Phillips scored the 30
goals.
So he was on the slight come down for it. However, it was still great to be able to say you've cooked for these people.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's so fun. I mean, my dad was a chef as well. Before he started, and then he went into Bunzel and whatnot afterwards. And no matter how bad his days gets, he's always like, it's not as hard as being a chef.
Yes.
Yes.
100%.
You set your capacity for pain quite early on, don't you, with what you can deal with? You
do. And it was the time that I stopped being a chef. I was 22. So I'd been a chef then for, including working whilst I was going through college, for about 5 or 6 years. Mm-hmm. And it just so happened that the local rep that I would normally use for breaks came round, sat with me. I said, I'm leaving. I was like, okay, where are you going? She goes, I'm going elsewhere. And she came in with the RSM at the time, the regional sales manager. And he mentioned to me that though actually what Breaks are doing now is looking to employ chefs, foodies, people that would like to go into something slightly different to what their normal day-to-day is, but have the experience of not only using potentially Breaks, but also actually food, speaking chefs' languages, and talking to them in their own kind of versions of what it is that they would need to understand, rather than just kind of numbers and everything like that. And I thought that's a really good mix, and maybe 40, 45 hours a week versus 70 plus hours a week. Yeah, I'll give that a go. So yeah,
Get
that's
paid.
eventually what got me into sales.
Yeah, yeah. That I mean, it must be when you've done that job to have someone who's actually done that with you and understands what it's like to be in those trenches must be a huge part of just that communication piece and knowing what
Mm,
they need. The trust must be there almost immediately, right, with it
yeah,
because you've earned the stripes and you've got the scars from doing it. So why
yeah.
wouldn't
I
you want
mean,
the person?
literally the scars.
Yeah, literally the scars. Yeah, it's a wild job, isn't it? Like it's
Mm.
funny. I didn't get any of that chefing skill from my dad. I didn't get a single, not one bit of it. And my missus is always upset about that. But it's yeah, what a way to begin your just work ethic, getting that in
Yeah,
early doors. So obviously you was at breaks, and it
yes,
was big food after, right?
it was.
What was your first role in leadership? Was it Nisbets or?
No, my first kind of dotted leadership role was when I was with Bidfood.
Mm,
And I'll say dotted, and I'll explain why. So I went in there to reinvigorate their new business. New business hunting was something that I was kind of finding myself specializing in. I suppose learning or having the resilience of being a chef, you kind of build that up. And when it comes down to new business, knocking on doors, you look at it one or two ways. Either, no, I don't really want to knock on that door. What if I get told no? Or the other version is, actually, I might get a yes, because you started with nothing. That for me was a real positive, something that I was really quite excited by. Um, so for me, I started in that team and I was in bid food for maybe 3.5 months. And I had the then regional managing director kind of ring me and say, Dan, I need to see you on Monday morning. I'm thinking, oh my God, what have I done wrong here? But what it was to do was going, because of the success that I'd had in a short space of time, was then going into working directly under the managing director, looking at going to nail some of the real big ticket prospects that we were been gunning for a while, but also supporting the other regional sales teams in what I was doing, how it was slightly different, and what was helping the success.
mm,
So I was then leading a couple of the team's new business development sides, as well as some of the individuals going into sites with them, going in to see customers and end users, and actually it materialized to be quite successful. Um, After that side of kind of getting the flavor of that leadership role, which I found myself kind of gravitating to quite well. Being a head chef at 21 years old and you're managing chefs that are double your age, that wasn't easy, but I worked out the way to do it. And how you speak to different people on different levels, and you're able to then get the best out of people. So I then had the opportunity to go and join a company called Fresh Fare, who were they're kind of a subdivision of Breaks, and that was my first kind of individual, personal, one-to-one kind of level management style,
mhm,
and the management role itself. That was interesting, I think I'll say. But ultimately, I was managing a team of BDMs, national account managers, as well as a team of van sales people. So making sure they were selling off the vans when they were going around to the kitchen, selling to the chefs, take some promotions with them, come up with a kind of MPD for the week, all of that kind of stuff. But I enjoyed it. But that's my kind of going back a few years now. But that was kind of my first steps into leadership.
mm, mm. I mean, and how many years have been in leadership now? Must over 10 years, right? Plus
Yeah, I mean,
13?
it's
Yeah,
got to be 12, 13 years, I
12,
think now.
13 years. What for you are some of the what are some of your pillars that you stand by in leadership? What are the main pillars that you run by, would you say?
I think that word itself, leadership,
Mhm,
that for me is really important. And what I mean by that is you have a leadership position or you had a managerial position. And a lot of people, when they think managerial position, they think staying behind keyboard, on the phone, shouting and barking at people, bossing out orders. That's not what leadership is. Leadership is actually being there with the individuals. So the thing for me, and one of the kind of the key kind of values that I work to is actually supporting the individuals themselves. That's not asking them, expecting them to go and do stuff that I wouldn't do myself. It's actually sitting down and working on stuff together. If we had a huge quote that we needed to do for the team, it would be case, okay, let's sit down and go through it together. Let me help you get the best out of this. And it wasn't a case of just me kind of wanting to pry or kind of micromanaging, because that's, it's a huge bugbear of mine, and certainly things that I would want to, be under, but also what I would never do myself. But it's just to give that support. So being that person that can actually support the team via one to one, having the time to sit down with these people and give them the time that they can come to you. Have the open door policy. No news is bad news. In theory, even if it's something that you don't want to hear, it's better coming out straight away and having the freedom to tell me about that straight away rather than waiting till it's too late.
Mhm.
And that's the kind of policy that I like to
Really
work with.
Mhm.
I think the other key elements to kind of what my personal kind of style and what I kind of look to is, who have I worked for that I've really, really enjoyed, and why? And equally, who have I worked for that I've really not enjoyed, and why? And for me, you take a fair chunk out of both of those. I've worked with some fantastic people in the past, some real strong, fantastic leaders, and some of the people that I've worked for when in both breaks and bid food, but also the likes of Nisbets and Lockhart. These people were fantastic, and I would never say a bad word about them. And some of the style and the leaderships of particularly the managing directors, if for me, are the most important parts. That's helped me personally. When I was at Lockhart, we had Steve Montgomery, Monty. What a character! For everybody that knows Steve, they'll know exactly what I mean. I've got some great stories about him that I'm not prepared to share today. But the way that he was to work with the team and the people that would talk to Steve on all sorts of levels. But what Steve did really, really well was get to know his team. He knew everybody. He knew what they were doing last weekend. They knew what football team they supported, what their hobbies were. That is so important to from a leadership perspective, getting the best out of your team. Because I've also worked with a few senior managers that know me because I'm on a spreadsheet, or they know their teams because they're on a spreadsheet.
Mhm.
That doesn't work for me.
Mhm.
There's no personality there. So getting to know my team, getting to know the people around me, getting the people that can help drive us to success, that's the key thing. And personally, rolling up your sleeves and just cracking on with it. That
Mhm.
for me is what I like to work and live by.
And you said something the other day when we spoke as well, which I think is super important as well, is around that trust piece.
Yes.
Can you remember exactly what it is that you said?
You're going to have to remind me, David.
It was it was a great one. Should have clipped it out on that call. It was I give people 100% trust unless they give me a reason not to.
Correct.
Straight from the off.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, yeah, it's a really, really good phrase to use. And it goes down to, when you're working with a new team, or you've got somebody new within your team, or you take a new leadership position in your team. You will have a load of different people that will say, "Oh, that person's brilliant," or "That person's not very good." Well, do you know what? Everyone starts on the same bracket here,
Mhm.
and it is absolutely valid that everybody gets the same value of trust,
Mhm.
100%, unless it's proven otherwise.
Yeah.
Then there's a different story and a different conversation to be had.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's a fantastic way to lead from my perspective around giving people that leeway,
Mhm.
and let them prove themselves. Don't hold people
Absolutely.
back.
I'm very much the same as well. I don't know where I got it from, but I've got to try and do that for everything in life, really, because otherwise I think you live in a state of paranoia with everything, and it's like, well, it's a lot less stressful if you want to if you find that you're being dishonest, then we can approach it, and maybe we don't have to. If it's in your personal life, you don't have to deal with that person, or
Hmm.
if it's at work, there's something you can do about it. But if you go around with the opposite, I think it makes life a lot easier, which is
Yeah.
I think I don't under I'm still trying to work out why entirely micromanagement does happen, because I had a sales trainer on a few months ago, and he said all it is just the corporate version of emotional insecurity. And I was like, "Oh, that's a really good way of putting that."
Yes.
And I think that trust piece is one of that. If you're naturally distrustful of people, you're probably going to edge towards that sort of micromanagement style,
Hmm.
aren't you, for the most
Yeah.
part?
I completely
Um,
agree, and I would take that a step further as well. I mean, the insecurity thing is that's a really good way of putting it. But I think if there's a micromanager, and there's a reason why they're doing it, 9 times out of 10, in my opinion, is because they don't back themselves.
Mm,
And I think for me is if you've got a team that you lead properly, there's never a reason to micromanage.
mm,
If you don't lead that team properly and you feel like you need to be over everyone's shoulder all the time, question yourself.
mm,
Question yourself about your ability to lead that team. And actually, is there anything that you might need to be doing better? Because then
mhm.
you won't need feel the need to do that micromanagement side.
Yeah, I mean, that's that insecurity right there, isn't it? You're insecure in your capability or whatever it might be, and it's being projected out
100%.
onto the rest of the team. What I always wonder is, do those types of people know that they're doing it? Or is it so automatic because it's
Mm.
that insecurity is something that isn't just something you think about, is it? You kind of, it's a light that someone else maybe puts
Mm.
on you. But do they, yeah, is it like involuntary that it just happens? I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean, I can't speak with experience of it, but I can speak with experience of being in an environment where that has happened in the past.
Mm,
And I think that is just built with that person. And actually, when I've seen micromanagers in the past in action, very erratic, not very rational, with kind of what they do and the decisions that they make,
mm,
very knee jerk reactions. So I think it could possibly be a personality trait, like you said, involuntary.
mm,
I don't know,
yeah.
but the same people that I know that act like that all have very similar personality traits, and I think
Mm,
I think it is that element of just having the insecurity. I think you're absolutely bang on with that.
Yeah, that seems to ring true because it's always very confusing to me when obviously speak to a lot of candidates salespeople, sorry, who experience that all the time.
Mm.
And we've done 1,000 polls and stuff. And if you speak to salespeople enough, the number one reason why they're leaving where they're at is usually that reason.
Yep.
And if that's such a big triggering factor and how much that's probably costing a business,
Mm-hmm.
um, why is it allowed to continue? And it's
100%.
one of those things that people will voice to people as well, especially when they're leaving. They'll they'll
Yeah.
they'll voice those things. So it seems like it has to be a very deeply ingrained personality trait for it to be projected out like that. I don't think
Yes.
uh, some organizations will have it as part, especially big corporate ones, where they have a lot of maybe structure, KPIs, that can be a part of it.
Hmm.
But um, even then, even if you've got those KPIs, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be micromanaged that much.
Correct.
It's just it's just structure, isn't it? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's always a strange one for me, and the amount of damage it does to companies. You think
Hmm.
that maybe someone maybe just needs to be told, but it's
100%.
it's a difficult thing, isn't it? To maybe
Yeah, it's
bring up with
100%.
somebody.
I mean, you just have to
Yeah.
look at one of the things that I quite often ask when going into a new company is what's the retention rate of the staff?
Mm,
Because that's a really telling picture.
it is. Yeah.
And it was a few questions that I asked when I've gone into a couple of the more kind of recent roles within my last number of years. And actually, you can see some really good ones where the retention rate is very, very high.
Mm,
Then you get a few low ones. And when you ask the question on that, it's quite interesting the responses you get. When you have a low retention rate, normally it's revolved around, no, the person wasn't right, or the people weren't right, or
mm,
we've restructured,
yeah.
and there's no self reflection there,
No.
and
It's a
it goes
blame. Yeah.
100%. It's that
Mm,
I've got the buck, I'm going to pass it over.
yeah.
But actually, what would be really really refreshing is if they said that's our fault because we were doing
Mm,
it this way. But
yeah.
actually, what we've done is we've reflected on that and we're
Mhm,
now doing something different.
yeah.
That for me is a cracking answer.
You can
And
get
it's
on board with that, can't you? You can work with that. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And
Exactly that.
actually, you would
It's
want to be
honesty.
part of changing that
Uh-huh.
as well. It's the first one that you mentioned there. It's funny because when uh as you're going into jobs, you'll ask those questions to companies, right? It's funny when you're where we're sat as the recruiters because those companies almost entirely, because you kind of get to know who they are just by work. You hear about it, and then when you speak with those people, they always say that they want the best of the best of the best because everyone else before them wasn't good enough. So
Yeah,
there's just been bad people, really bad people. We want the best of the best of the best, and they want 20 boxes out of 20 boxes ticked, but they're usually the ones that offer very average or below average. There's no reason why the creme de la creme would come to them.
exactly.
But their expectations are extremely high for what
Hmm.
they can achieve. And I think that comes down to kind of what you said. There's kind of lack of self-awareness
Hmm.
of what you can
100%.
achieve right now.
Absolutely.
I'm under no illusions that the best recruiters in the world want to come join my business. I wouldn't even attempt it. It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
You have to know where you're at and be honest so you
Hmm.
can, move forward, right? But I think it's those narcissistic traits that I think we might come on to again in a second
Yes.
about
Yes. I
something
think we
else
will.
that
Yes.
come through. But it's funny how you see we'll see them from different ways. Once you've been around the block enough, you can feel it and see it, can't you?
Yeah,
From
you
these
can, and
people.
I think if we have a look at what I'm doing today and where I am today with Fat Boys, two of our latest recruits, in terms of who we would go for in a previous life versus what we've gone for today. The two people that we got through, they're young, full of enthusiasm, fire in the belly, and we're able to support them getting the best out of what it is that we need from them in their role.
Mhm.
For me, that's perfect. If I was to go and say, right, I want the number one salesperson in the UK to come and join me today, yeah, it'd be great. But actually, what works for us personally is getting somebody that knows enough about the industry. They
Mhm.
know the kind of business that we are and who we're up against, but actually the desire.
Mhm.
For me, there's
Mhm.
someone that's going to want to go out and do the difference. The reason why
Yeah.
they're in the job is for that person to make a difference to themselves, but also to the business that they represent. And
Mhm.
the two young guys that we got in the most recent of the last year or so have been absolutely fantastic.
Mhm.
One person that came in as a coordinator now works within our projects team and
Mhm.
just won an award via one of the customers that we supply. You know, what a story that is.
Mhm.
This person didn't have the experience to do that, but we listened to what it is that she wanted to do. So we listened to what it is that she wanted to do. We've helped her, we've coached her, and she's absolutely flying. And the other guy that joined us would have been about 6, 7 months ago now. I've just said 6, 7, haven't I? My kids are going to hate that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it drives me
I don't
mad.
understand it, but I hear it
Yeah,
all the time.
drives me mad. But he's really picked up. He came from outside the industry,
Yeah.
and the work that he's doing now has been absolutely fantastic. Brilliant. So for me, when it comes down to the kind of right people and stuff like that, honesty, go for the approach that you want, understand what it is that the person wants to achieve, what's important to them. And if all that marries up and you like each other, you get on well, why not?
Kind of reminds me, um, it sounds like you're a football fan. Dan, you're a big football guy? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure I should mention the team I support because it's probably not going to go down particularly well. Anyway, I'm a Man United fan,
Man United. All
unfortunately.
right.
Yes.
Damn it, I'm about to quote a Liverpool manager, so excuse
Oh,
me. I'm not a Liverpool fan though, so
okay.
all good. We're all good. Um, but it reminds me a few years ago of Jurgen was talking about James Milner, and he said if I had a team of James Milners within the Premier League every year, not the best player by
Hmm.
far, but that hunger and determination and desire, attitude, all those things is what makes that's why he's still playing now, right? But if you had a
100%.
team of those, you'd win every day of the week, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And do you know what? That goes down to that want and the work ethic behind it.
Mm,
Because that's not necessarily that you can't teach work ethic, in my opinion. You
mm,
either have it or you don't. I was always brought up with work around me. My parents always worked. When I was at college, the first thing I wanted to do is work. Get into the
mm,
trade of the industry that I knew. My children are the same. I've got two teenage children. Oh no, three now because one turned 13 this week. That's scary. So two older teenage children. Both of them work. And
mm,
for me, it's about that work ethic. But that's something that I don't think you can teach. It's something that is kind of there or it isn't. But if you've got the work ethic and you've got the mindset that you want to achieve,
mm.
there's nothing out of the realms of possible, David.
See, I actually think you can teach it, and I say this because of my own experience,
Okay.
because growing up, I had things very easy. Mum and dad created a great life for us, and work ethic didn't really. My dad had the work ethic and created everything around us, right? But I was quite lazy as a teenager and in my early 20s. But it took to the penny dropped in my mid 20s, and then it went the other way completely. It
Mhm.
went 100% the other way. And the reason I think it can be learned is because if you don't have the work ethic, your life will end up in a certain way.
Yep.
It will get there. It will not be the way that you want it to be. And when it gets to that stage, you have two choices. You can keep going down that path and blame everybody else, or you can do something about it.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, if you do make that choice, you're coming from, uh, it takes a little bit longer to get it because you've not had it drilled into you, or it wasn't something that was innate from a young age, but you can develop it if you do want to change your life.
Mhm.
At
Yeah.
least that's
I
what
I
I've
mean,
found.
look, I don't necessarily disagree with that, David. It's a really a good way of looking at it, actually, and that's really a good success story in that sense. But I think in terms of, when you sit in front of a candidate, from my perspective, when I'm sitting in front of a candidate, the first thing that I look obviously for is making sure they're sitting there for the right reason.
Mhm.
Um, the second one is what's the determination? What's the work
Yeah,
ethic?
yeah,
Are they keen to learn, or am I sitting in front of somebody that's got the best looking CV in the world? They think they know everything, and they expect the results to come just because of what they've done in the past
yeah, yeah,
versus that, do you
yeah,
know what? I don't know much about that, but I'm really keen to learn about that.
yeah.
And actually, this is kind of what I've done in my previous place, and look, this is what I've done. There's different ways of looking at it, I
Mm,
suppose, but that fire in the belly is something that I remember a previous boss saying to me,
mm,
because when I joined into being from chef to sales, I
mm.
remember my first sales meeting. I sat there and we had something called an A3, which self-explanatory, big A3 bit of paper, okay, and I sat there and all I had in front of it was numbers. And I knew numbers as grams and ounces and kilos. That was my chefing. I looked at these numbers and thought, what's that? No idea. And I just went straight over my head. And I spoke to my RSM afterwards and I said, look, this is well out of my comfort zone, but I'm prepared to give it a go. Can you let me
Mm,
know what I need to know? What's the most important
mm,
things that I need to know of this? What am I looking for? What's the
mm.
information? And the thing that sticks with me is bottom right hand corner. If your bottom right hand corner is in the
Yeah,
green, you're good. If it's in the red, we've got work to do. And I thought, do you
yeah,
know what? Brilliant. And I was prepared to
yeah.
learn it. It's new to me.
Yeah, well, you've got to be prepared. One thing you learn with that is you've got to be prepared to be embarrassed because at the beginning,
Yes. I had
you've
a
got
few
to
of
be able.
those.
Yeah, same. It's constantly being
Yeah.
embarrassed. But you, uh, if you're prepared to take that step to be embarrassed, then you can learn and become good at that thing, right? Whatever
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. Whatever thing in life that we're doing, all of us suck at it at the beginning. Like you suck at everything, and you'll suck a bit more, and then you'll start getting typical like J curve, right? But you have to
Yes.
be prepared to be embarrassed in the first instance and not think that you know everything. Right.
100%.
And it's like kind of a
100%.
humility, right? So I
It
don't know.
is.
It's if you come across people who always they have the approach of it's just another I'm a student and it's another day of learning. I think that's a great way to go about it. Um, Come across plenty of salespeople. We had a sales guy interview last year or so, and he had all the industry experience for this role on paper, had everything.
Mhm.
Versus a guy who had barely any, but his attitude was spot on. And they did a presentation, and the presentation of the guy who had that experience was he felt like he didn't have to present because he already had the experience. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the
yeah.
other guy who knew nothing, even though he was wrong about a lot of it, you can tell that he tried to use his initiative and think about it and present it in the best possible way. And that guy got the role. And telling that to the guy who didn't get it, he was furious. And he said, I deserved it because of what I'd done in the past. And we had to say to him, it doesn't really matter what you've done in the past. Like it's what you
Mhm.
do moving forwards that people are going to look at. It doesn't mean anything that you've got 25 years of this. If you've got that, you should
Absolutely.
have nailed the presentation,
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
you know?
Couldn't agree more.
So it just shows what you can do with that attitude. And people, it's an infectious thing too, right? People can see you don't have to be right, but if you've thought about it, you can think, I can see why he's done that.
Yeah.
And you can work with that. So you can help that type of person. You can't work with someone who's closed minded like that,
Absolutely.
right? It's
No,
just
I
gonna make
couldn't
your life
agree more.
harder, you know?
Spot on.
But with going to back to the like we said, the narcissism, the
Yes.
yeah, the story of what Fat Boys has experienced, I think would be so good to talk about. I think a good place to start, maybe Dan, just with it, is just I guess just a tiny bit of context behind who Fat Boys are and where they were at, and
Yeah.
then what you've experienced, and just go for it. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, I joined Fat Boys in September 2024. I came in as a head of sales at that particular time. And after about 3 months or so, I met with the then MD at the time, and Chris Neild, our owner, good old Chris. And they made me into commercial director. The reason for that was essentially because what I was doing already, but also the more involvement that I was having in the other businesses under Fat Boys Group. So we do kind of technical services, which is your normal kind of call out maintenance work. We do the kind of normal day-to-day catering equipment. We look after significant projects as well. And we also have an import business through Fire and Ice, which is like Pizza Master product and B Pro products. So I was having more of a kind of a feel for the entirety of the business rather than just the sales side. So we got to around about this time last year, and we were looking, and my job at that time then was to really start looking into the kind of understanding of where we're going. What's the sales looking like? What's the projects looking like? What's the cash flow looking like? And at that point, it was okay, but it looked like there was something deteriorating. But actually, our sales were going up. So for me, straight away, it's like, right, let's get under the skin of this and find out what's happening. So anyway, we kept going, and we took on a really large chunk of business around about February, March last year. We opened up more of a kind of design and build side to Fat Boys, which is things like shop fitting and stuff like that. Now, it's something that was kept away from me, from Chris, and was managed at that point right by the kind of then managing director. So for me, being kind of numbers, I was I don't know enough about this, making me a little bit uneasy. So I want to know the cost, I want to know the value, I want to know the turnover, what's the projection, all of those kind of normal things you want to understand. Um, we got to around about kind of May, June time last year, and our cash flow was really starting to deteriorate. We were seeing top line sales still increasing. Everything was increasing from a sales perspective. So you look at the top line sales versus last year, you're going, excellent. You look further down and you're realizing something's not right here because we're doing all these sales, yet where's the income for it? So anyway, it was around about end of July, beginning of August. Chris and I had a conversation, and I flagged it with Chris, and I said, Chris, something's not right here. There's something not right in our business because we're bringing all this revenue in, and we're not seeing the fruits of the labor. It's not happening, and something's missing. And Chris said to me, "Do you think we're being robbed?" And I said, "I don't know. I've not thought that far ahead. I'm looking at, day to day business as it is, trying to figure out if we're charging the right pricing. Are we reconciling it properly? I'm trying to look at it that way. And I had my blinkers on because I was purely looking to find the problem. And then when Chris said that, something kind of tweaked in the back of my mind. And I thought, design and build. I need to get under the skin of that and I need to find out what's happening there. So anyway, I went on annual leave, and Chris and I kind of crossed over by about a week. When he came back, after I'd gone through all of these kind of suppliers that we were using that I was unfamiliar with because they were not kind of your normal catering equipment suppliers, it's when I found the first part of the pull down straw. Okay. So I found something that was set up that was wrong, and we were paying money into something that was set up that was wrong, that we should not have been doing. And unfortunately, that led back to the then MD. It was a real kind of hair stand up on the back of your neck moment because you knew you found something you never thought you would. Um, and it was massive alarm bells. So the first thing that I did then was go and speak to the head of finance at the time, and I said, "Look, I've just found something. Can you qualify this, please? Because I think I'm right." Then we found something else. Then we found something else and something else and something else. And the more we pulled at this thread, the more and more we found. Chris was bang on with what he said in terms of what he thought might have been happening. When Chris came back in the following Monday, forgive me, the following Thursday after he finished his annual leave, I showed Chris what we'd found, and we knew it. We knew what was happening, and we knew the individual that was doing it. And then it was decided that on that following Monday, by myself and the board, that I would ask the current MD to leave, which we did, and he left. Since then, this was on the 8th of September. Since then, we then had one hell of a task on our hands, because not only were we losing money, simply because of the embezzlement that we'd been under or been going through, we were then having issues with all sorts of things that I won't bore you with the granular detail, but from a financial aspect, it was hard, very, very hard. But we got to around about the start of December. We saw a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. And the priority for me was always stabilize the business. When we get to the point that I think that we can start to go and move forward, then we'll do that. But stabilization is the key priority for me at this point. And we managed to do that. I think kind of moving fast forward to where we are today, we are still not completely clear. However, we have made a hell of an inroad. And in terms of being financially stable, we are again. We are again, and we can continue now to look forward rather than just keep looking in our rearview mirror around what happened. But when you look back, I reflected on this between the kind of Christmas and New Year break. You don't realize what you've been through until you look back, because every day was a fight. And I genuinely mean it. Every single day from that 8th of September was a fight. And that was making sure that the staff were happy. Priority number one, the staff were happy. Number two, the customers were happy. Number three, the suppliers were happy. And trying to please all the people all the time, we know, as the saying goes, it's impossible. So we had to make sure we were prioritizing things in such an order that we were able to continue doing what we were doing. And the inroad that we made with the backlog that we had to overcome was huge, absolutely huge. And as I said, moving forward, we've still got a few hurdles to navigate. We absolutely have, but they're navigatable, if that's a word. Might have just made that one up, but
It's a good one.
you can, we know how to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
We know what we're doing. We know what the goal is. We know what the structure is. And for me, that's all I needed. I needed to know that everything in terms of structure wise, I'd managed to get in place. The people that have been at Fat Boys throughout all of this, and I got quite emotional on the last day before Christmas, trying to speak to the team, because when I mentioned to you earlier in this conversation, David, I mentioned around retention and how important that is. Not one person left us. Not one. Everybody could have quite within their right gone, ooh, not sure about this, I'm off. Everybody puffed out their chest, rolled up their sleeves and went, nah, we're not having this done to us. We're fighting. And every single person fought for everything they had for us to continue doing what we're doing. And the reason why we're still here today is because of everybody that was under Fat Boys. So no, I think for me, and looking back on what we did, what we've achieved to date, is just tipping my hat to every single person that it operates within my team. And like I said, we're not as clear as we want to be just yet, but I tell you what, we're getting there and we're close. It just so happens that moving forward with projects that we've got coming up, with different contracts that we've now got in place, the woods are certainly looking a lot clearer for us, and it's been a journey. It's been one hell of a journey.
I mean, it's I'm not surprised you got emotional, you know, uh, how everyone pulls together and no one left through that is amazing. It's testament really to, the culture, you know, that you've been able to build there, and moving forwards, how strong that will make the team. You know, if you
Yeah.
can come through something like that and that's when you really have to work together. That's when you really are in the trenches with each other, aren't you? You know,
Yeah.
that's where teamwork really, the rubber hits the road, doesn't it? So
Yes.
moving forwards, it's going to be for people coming into that team, for the people already in that team, you're coming into somewhere which is people have got your back, don't they?
Hmm.
They've got your back and they'll work for each other. And it's not going to be a flimsy work environment. It's been
Nope.
forged through fire into something strong, which is so
Absolutely.
shit. You have to go through something like that to get that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the only way these things happen. It's like everything else in life, isn't it? You only become strong through going through hardship. Fuck's
Yeah.
sake. It's the only way. And unfortunately, had to go through something so difficult. Um, but you've prevailed through it, and it must give huge confidence to yourself and everybody else in the team and
Hmm.
completely change the face of what it's like to work there. It must be so different than it was 18 months, 2 years ago. It must be completely different.
Yeah, it's exactly, and it's one of the things that I hear, and a few of the team have said, the environment that we work within today versus where we did just 6 months ago, it's
Mm,
completely different. The openness that we have at Fat Boys, we're not the biggest company. We've got 22 employees. Everybody knows everybody. Everyone will talk to everybody.
mm,
In the mornings when we make a cup of tea together, or someone comes round, do you want another brew? Yeah, perfect. The openness that we have of Fat Boys is unreal. Now, like I said, I've worked with some cracking companies, and I've never experienced something like this ever. And the way that the departments communicate, the way that we speak to one another, the togetherness that this is brought on, you would have taken years to build something like this,
mm.
and we've been fast tracked
Yeah,
because of this.
yeah.
And the resilience, like you said, the resilience that this gives us, we like I said before, and I don't want to paint a false view here. We've still got some work to do.
Mm,
We absolutely have some work to do. But I would have snapped your hand off to be at this point 3 or 4 months ago.
mhm,
And that's where we are. We've got a very, very positive future looking up
mhm.
for what we've got coming in,
Yeah.
because I'm the one that reviews the pipelines, right? And I've
Mhm,
seen what's on them, and I've seen what's been confirmed. And that is
mm,
bloody brilliant, because I
mm.
would not have expected that 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah, you're winning a war now, aren't you?
Yes.
You're winning a war. Morale,
Yep.
all those things come with it. Doesn't mean it's gonna be easy, but you can get people behind it, everybody moving in the same direction, you know, no bitching, no bickering, politics, all that has to go, doesn't it? It can't
Mhm.
exist in an
100%.
environment like that, you know?
100%. And you
Um,
know what you mentioned there about the kind of the bitching and the talking behind backs. Again, one of the people that I worked with previously, I remember them saying to me, "We don't like coffee station snipers." So what the hell does he mean by that? And he goes, "If you got something to say it. I'll say it. But don't go to the coffee machine with your mate and start shooting me from there." And I thought,
mm.
bloody hell, I love that. That is fantastic. And so we don't. We've got
Mm,
this really open policy. If there's a problem, just come and have a chat. Like I said before, David, even if it's bad news, I need to know, and we need to know. It's fine, because talk about it. It's better than
mm.
hiding it. So no, we have no coffee station snipers at Fat Boys. It's brilliant. It's fantastic.
That's so good. I mean, and for you, having gone through, it's nothing that you don't ever expect you're going to go through. Like you say, those moments, I bet when Chris said about are we being robbed, and it started that fuse of like
Mm,
where that went. It's not something you ever mentally prepared to consider, is it?
no.
What's it done for you as a person going through that?
That's a really good question, because when Chris looked at me in the eyes, when I told him what physical proof I'd got, I saw the look in Chris's face. and that look will stay with me forever.
Mm,
But I also got to look Chris in the eyes when we managed to refinance our business and tell him that. And I got that view of
mhm,
Chris as well.
mm,
What it's done for me also though is I took every day home with me because I'm just
mm,
that kind of person.
mhm,
When you get home after a day's work, for example, when I came back home yesterday, busy long day, successful day, but a busy long day. You go and see the children, you speak to your wife, and you're able to start to slow down a little bit.
mhm,
When we were going through the pits of what we were going through, I didn't have that slowdown.
mm,
I was never on a slowdown. You
mhm,
know, even on the Saturdays and the Sundays, I
mm,
could not stop and I could not unwind
mhm.
because I knew what was coming up on the Monday.
Yeah.
And I knew Monday would then lead on to Tuesday and what would come up on the Tuesday.
Mm,
So for me personally, I needed to make sure that the people around us were not feeling what I was feeling.
mm,
I can take that. I'm a big boy. I've got broad shoulders.
mm,
But what I don't want to happen is for my team to feel the same as I was.
mm,
So I was making sure that the communication to everybody was really open,
mhm,
all open. Everybody in the business knew where we were at what
mm,
point. They didn't need to know the granular details of
mm,
the stuff that me and the finance team were sorting out in the background, but they needed to know that there was a light at the end of the tunnel.
mm. That's
And
such
they
a
knew it.
wonderful way of doing it as well, because in the absence of that information, people's imagination will create something worse and it
Correct.
will fester, right? And then you'll have all sorts of different issues coming off the back of it. And even
Yep.
though that information, I'm sure that a lot of that communication was not positive, but the
Hmm.
fact that they knew it, what it actually was going on, helps them be able to come to terms with it and actually help with something like that rather than feeling like
Correct.
they're on the sidelines with
Yep.
it, right? And life's happening to them, like now they're part of the situation rather than them just getting hammered from left, right, and center. So great
100%.
way of doing it. Not easy, I imagine, but
No.
um it shows fucking value of communication. Jesus Christ.
Oh, you're not wrong,
Right?
mate.
Jesus.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And like I said, you know, with the board that we've got with Patrick, Janice, Chris, and myself, we knew that the communication was absolutely key for this, and we knew that we had to be really, really bang on with what it is that we were saying and how we were saying it, and
Mm,
almost hold that kind of metaphorical umbrella over the team to
mm,
stop the shit going down to them.
yeah,
They need to know certain things, and they knew everything they needed to know. And again, that really helped.
yeah.
So for me personally, I think it's really looked upon as that was the biggest challenge that I've ever had to kind of navigate through. Not only
Mm,
was I going through it, I was one of the leaders through it.
mhm,
And so I needed to make sure that what I was doing was as clean as bang on as I could possibly make it.
mhm,
Um, but for people that know me and know me personally, they know that I'm a stubborn bugger. And if I've got that vision, I'll try my best to get there until I physically can't do it.
mhm,
And I knew this one. I knew we could overturn this. And also bearing in mind the person that had put us into this predicament. And for me, that felt like that was a challenge against me, against Chris, against everyone. And that was not one that I was going to prepare to lose.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
so we didn't.
And one thing I really admire that you've done as a business as well is also be honest about this with on LinkedIn and to publicly as well. You know,
Yeah.
which I don't think many companies would do. Um,
No.
but you've gone and done it, and I imagine the response to it has been overwhelmingly positive.
Yes.
Right, because you're in a position where I'll just speak for myself. When I saw it, I was like, I want to fucking help. like how, you know, and I said to Jan, that's what I said to Janice when I spoke to her. Like, how can I help you here with this? Like, what
Hmm.
can we do? Can we get the message out a little bit more? Obviously, my job's to try and help good people find good people for your business. But I imagine that's the overwhelming response instead of what you could assume as being, um, I don't know, maybe you could go into that situation feeling embarrassed.
Hmm.
You could,
Hmm.
and you'd be well within your rights to, but instead going the other way and just going, "Bosh, we've got nothing to hide. Let's talk about it. Everybody knows what's going on."
100%. I mean,
Love
the responses, like as you quite rightly say, was just unreal.
mm,
Absolutely unreal. The personal messages that I was getting, the personal message the team were getting, the message that our social media pages were getting, the want to help, to support, and I kid you not, the suppliers in particular, you
mm,
know, oh my days, the support and the help that they've given us and the leeways that they've given us, we wouldn't have been here today without them.
mm,
Simple as that. Genuinely, we wouldn't. We wanted to make sure the message was clear that this wasn't a fat boys problem.
yeah,
Although we're carrying the burden of it,
yeah,
it was
yeah.
not a fat boys problem, and it is not a fat boys problem.
Mhm,
This was
mhm,
everything that one person managed to try and get away with.
mhm,
The
mhm,
scary thing is, right? Genuinely, the scary thing for me is I reckon we were 2 or 3 weeks away
mm,
from being in a very bad position.
mhm, mhm,
We were lucky what we got away with what we did in terms of when we found it.
mm,
But the support, the praise on putting that information out there,
mm,
because we wanted to make sure that no other company went through what we did,
mm. And
and it
it's
was so
kind of like they've
important
done
to
that
go.
before as well, right? So other companies had succumbed from this person,
Yep,
and
yep, and
yeah,
we've had them reach out to us as well,
yeah,
David.
that's so
Directly,
wild.
and it's just been unreal.
That's so
Um,
wild situation.
mm,
You know, it's important. It's important to talk about it. You know, people like
yeah,
that can't be given. They can't be allowed to exist. You know, that's not to steal from people who trust you to be the leader
yep,
of those people and do that. We talk about leadership how many times already here. You know,
hmm
there's one thing shielding it, there's another thing taking from those people. Like that's just I can't imagine the type of person you have to be for that. The level of
no,
insanity, also the stress that must put your psyche under to know you're doing that to people, whether you want to
yeah,
admit it or not, must be fucking horrible.
it,
You
it,
can't be in a
it's
good space as a person doing stuff like
no, you can't, and the amount of times I've tried to rationalize it in my head,
that. Yeah.
but you just can't.
No.
I physically cannot rationalize it in my head, and it goes down when you use the word, right. You use the word psychopath.
Mm,
People will look at horror films, slasher movies. That's a psycho.
mm,
It's not. A psychopath is a person that can make decisions with no emotion.
mm,
That's all I need to say. But
mm.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
But the what got me through this, right? Um, and what got Fat Boys through it, as I mentioned, everyone together. But
Mm,
also, I mentioned that I wasn't able to switch off. But being
mm.
able to come home and talk to my wife, because she knew everything, absolutely
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Because I could go and speak to people at work, but they're in the same boat as me. I need other opinions.
Mm.
I need other people to talk to. And she knew everything from start to finish. And every time I told her something different, she goes, "Don't worry, you got this. You can
Yeah,
deal with that.
yeah.
You can deal
That's
with
so
that."
important to have that 'cause there's only you as the person as spearheading and fixing this, you have to show a certain side, right? You know, you're holding a lot in emotionally for yourself. You have to,
Yeah,
you know. You got to give that to someone's got to be there to support you with that.
yeah, yeah,
The fact that your wife's done that is amazing.
yeah. She was
Um,
brilliant.
I know you do.
Absolutely brilliant.
It's not like it's quiet at home either because you've got 5 kids, right? As well, so
Yep,
it's busy as hell as well at home.
100%.
So it must be, it, the amount of work all of that takes on its own is must be unbelievable. You know, trying to Elon Musk it your way through,
I
repopulate
know,
the
right?
earth. Yeah, I know. Such a crazy story, Dan. Honestly, and I really hope this is going to go out to people in our industry. We're obviously going to name names here, but people can work it out. Like,
Yeah.
someone like this can't be allowed to get away with it, and they're
No.
going to come to. Um, that person will be punished,
Mhm.
hopefully, with this, and they'll, rightly so. But it's, I wonder, you said about before that you'd sort of fast track that culture, and all of that had happened. I imagine that's going to happen the same for where the future vision of this business now moving forwards. It's probably going to fast track where you wanted to go prior to all of this because you're going to have your foot on the pedal is going to be different than when it was before, right? Everybody coming on board is going to act differently, work differently. Um, and the future of the business sounds like it's going to be very, very bright
Yeah,
as well.
there's certainly some exciting things coming up for the Fat Boys group. And as I said, where I was tweaking the brakes and making sure we were stabilizing and doing what we were doing, um, we're going to be slowly starting to squeeze on that accelerator a little bit.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's some very exciting things coming up for us as a business. Some of the movements that we are making, some of the business that we're working with. Yeah, so watch this space on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Dan, thanks for being open and honest with everything. It's a fascinating story. Uh, we'll do another one another time in
Yes,
maybe a couple of years, and we'll see how the face of everything changed.
absolutely.
So it's going to be fascinating to watch. But yeah, thanks for being on here with us. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. Thanks for hosting, David. I appreciate it.
Nice one, Dan. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.